Hello ladies, Kristen here, reporting not quite live and not quite in person from my bathroom. Ta-da! Actually, it's the only place that I could figure out how to rig up my camera without everything falling over, so it's pretty exciting over here. All right, so we are going into loving Jesus. And well, this was a good one. I have a whole bunch of notes and scribbles and highlights, and I'm just going to go through some of them and pull out my favorite pieces. Now, last week I had asked you to look at the depth of what it cost God for the purchasing of our freedom. So we're going to take a little bit deeper look at that and see how that applies to how we live today. Starting off with that very first paragraph said, freedom is more than correct theology. If we only had to just know the right stuff, be able to cite chapter and verse, and that's all it would take to be sanctified, then Satan himself would be the most devout Christian. Just knowing stuff is not going to cut it. Knowing the correct theology is not going to be enough. It is an absolute intrinsic relationship between us and Christ. It is the way that we love him that determines our sanctification. Because the closer we are to who Jesus is, the more we realize the depth of our depravity, and thus we are overwhelmed by his glory and his saving power in our lives. And that is where sanctification happens. I really loved that second page of the chapter. God demonstrates the very depths of his love when, in the midst of our sin, he sent his only son. Not just his most available or most willing son, but his only son, to step out of his self-existence and be shaped into fragile clay, to fight for a people who didn't want him, and to die for a people who didn't deserve him. When we think about the most valuable thing we own, or the valuable experience that we have earned, or the most valuable piece of knowledge that we have worked towards, we can understand what it cost us. And yet, every single one of those things are little blips on the eternity scale. Everything that we have earned or we have purchased ourselves are insignificant compared to that which Christ has purchased. Because when we buy something, it never costs us as much as we are. When we determine a value of something, it is always based on that which someone is willing to pay. That duct tape banana that went for, I don't even remember, millions of dollars. Let's throw out a number, $700 million for a duct tape banana on a wall. Someone was willing to pay a ridiculous amount of money for that one thing. And the cost determines the value. As long as someone was willing to pay that much for that banana was therefore valued at that much. And when we look at a stick of gum, if you really, really, really need that one precious stick of gum, you're willing to pay $100 for it. And therefore, that stick of gum is valued to the purchaser for $100. If, however, you don't really need a piece of gum, you don't really want a piece of gum, you might toss a quarter at a kid to make him happy, and therefore you have placed the value of 25 cents on that piece of gum. Because as the purchaser, as the one willing to give for that item, you then determine the value of that item. If someone's selling a stick of gum for $100 and you don't care for it, you're not going to pay that much. Therefore, the value of that piece of gum to you as the purchaser, or in this case, the one who decides not to purchase it, it's just not worth it. Therefore, there is no value in that piece of gum to the person who decides to set it aside. But when God purchased us, he didn't set a value based on what we could give him in return. He didn't set our value on anything that we have done, anything that we will be or become or could accomplish. He set the value at that which it cost for our purchase. And he purchased it with his own son. Therefore, Our value is fixed at the price God paid for us. We are valued at the price of his own son. We are valued at the cost of Jesus. And if that doesn't give you a reason to wake up in the morning and say, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do today? Then there's a little bit of re-examining that I would encourage you to do, because when you understand the value that God puts on you because of what he was willing to pay for you, it will change your entire outlook on who you are, who God is, and what he has called you to. The next page, at the very bottom of that second paragraph here, the reminder that Jesus is God, not just something that God sent, but God's own person. Imagine what it cost God, who is so united that his three persons are literally also one person, to take what has always been and to rip it from eternity and to shape it into something begotten. Imagine what it cost him to take what has always existed and always sustained itself, his own nature, and to put it into a breakable body, not just to be an example for us, but ultimately because the only way to purchase the thing he longed for was to kill a part of himself that was entirely unbreakable. Imagine what it cost him. This entire chapter looks at all that God did to purchase our freedom. And the question is why? And the answer is because he loved us when we were unlovable, simply because he loved us. God so loved the world that he gave. And he didn't just give something that was equivalent to the cost of making us. He paid, he gave that which was equal to how much he valued us. And that was his own son, Jesus. As Michael says, it stirs a kind of love in me that I wasn't capable of before I understood how much he loved me. And as 1 John 4:19 says, we love because he first loved us. How we lay our life at his feet depends entirely on who he has made us to be and how we are called to represent him. But why is the same for us all. So Jesus calls us to respond to the value he has placed on us in a myriad of different ways, in different times, for different people. But the reason why should always be the same. The why is not about who we are, what we've done, what we can do, but the why is entirely about Jesus himself, who he is, what he has done, and how desperately he has loved us. It's absolutely mind-boggling when we when we start to begin to almost try to understand the depth of the value that is in Christ, much less the fact that Jesus was offered for our freedom. If I could have one thing that I wake up to every single morning, I would hope it would be that one thought. That if Jesus was the price paid for my freedom, understanding that value, how would that change what I do with my day? How would that change what I do with the habits I build? How would that change the way I speak to my family, to my friends, to the annoying person who's maybe driving in front of me or holding up the line at the grocery store? How would that change the way I eat? How would that change the way I use those extra minutes, those margins in my day, whether to exercise or just sit down or to take a nap or to call a friend or to make purposed choices? How would my intentionality throughout the day change based on the value of Christ and how he was given for my freedom? I would love to train my brain and my heart to wake up with that question every single morning, because that would change everything. This is a good chapter. It's a really good chapter. Here's the last couple of phrases here from the last paragraph at the bottom and then at the top there. This is your moment. You will never get to Jesus through your own strength. Absolutely impossible. Believe me, I tried. You cannot read, pray, or chase your way into intimacy with God. The only thing you can do is fall at his feet and surrender yourself to the overwhelming rush of his love. The only thing you can do is let him see you, which, by the way, he already knows. He already sees. But we must come to that beautiful place of transparency, which will result in intimacy. And we need to be transparent with ourselves, and thus realizing that he will see us for who we are, so that we can see once and for all that he actually loves us. He actually loves you. Again, not for anything you have done, anything you are, or anything you could ever possibly hope to accomplish. Not for anything you can achieve here on earth, not for anything that you will be in heaven, but for the fact that he loved you. And in that love rests your security of salvation as well. As long as he loves you, you're solid. And he is faithful to continue to love us. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more waiting for things to change. Just come as you are and let him love you. And when we do that, when we understand the value that he places on us, it should result in an overwhelming sense of gratitude, of joy, and of unending praise and worship in every single thing that we do. When we are overcome with the love that Jesus has for us, we cannot help but respond with love to him. And in that love rests obedience. And in that obedience rests the desire to turn away from everything that might entrap us, that might seem like temptation, that might pull us toward that direction. Love, holding on to obedience, will pull us away from that and keep us focused on who Jesus is. As we go into the next bit of the book, we then have our devotional. So there are 3 weeks of devotionals here. You can go ahead and read the what to expect thing here, but then it'll give you the heads up. On week 1, you have 1 page or a couple pages of paragraphs to read, and then there are going to be response pages. So day 1, day 2, day 3, there are 5 days here, and it gets into some questions that are pretty personal. So I'm not sure quite how deep we're going to be looking at the responses to these questions, but I would encourage you to take a deep look about who you are, who God is, and realizing yet again that every single need that we have, which was intrinsically and beautifully placed in our lives and in our hearts for the sole purpose of drawing us closer to Christ, that those needs would be filled by Jesus himself and only, always Jesus. So have fun jumping into that devotional. Enjoy remembering how much he loves you, and may that love spur us to love him and obey him in return. Bye.